Hello, here is going to be a simple guide on how to get your Steam games running on the AYN Thor. So if you've seen my other videos, then you'll know by now that magic O word, not that one, this one, Obtainium. So we're going to tap into that. So we're going to look at a couple of apps. We're going to look at GameHub Lite and Game Native. The reason we're looking at the Lite version of GameHub is because the Lite version is based off the original version, GameHub. However, there was some controversy around that app as it involved a lot of telemetry and data collection, and apparently the original one does run slightly better. But if you want to trade your personal data with the Chinese government for a few extra frames, then you're welcome to do so. The setup's the same. Some emulation enthusiasts probably would. I'm not one of them. So we're going to focus on just GameHub Lite and Game Native. Now, I tend to mainly use GameHub Lite. I've not had much luck with Game Native, but we'll see how we get on. So we're in Obtainium. We're going to scroll down to the PC emulation section. So we're going to get GameHub Lite and install that. For this one, just use the bottom one, just the standard one. The other options are related to how it sees the APK file. So it's quite high level, quite complex, not really necessary for what we're going to do today. So just that bottom one, GameHub Lite, and it's currently version 5.1.3. So we'll continue that. Let that download. Shouldn't take too long. There we go, install. And we're also going to get Game Native just underneath it and install that as well. So what these are essentially wrappers for your Steam games. So if you've used the Steam Deck or you've done any gaming on something like Linux, they use a system called Proton, which basically wraps the game in a compatibility layer, which allows it to run on different types of machines. I will say that some of the games that I've tried to run this have not run too well. I found the best types of games are smaller indie titles. For example, I've been playing tons of Megabonk. That runs an absolute treat. It only really starts to slow some slight frame drops once the screen gets massively busy. But even so, it's barely noticeable. And the novelty of having it on such a small device is always warranted. This seems to be taking quite a while to install. It doesn't normally take this long, so I'm going to skip ahead and let it finish downloading. There we are, that took a while. So hopefully it doesn't take as long for you. Normally it does not take that long, so I don't quite know what's happened there. So we'll just install that one as well. And whilst we're in Obtainium, I also want to draw your attention to something else. If you scroll down to utilities, you'll see this EmuReady Lite. So this is also by Productivity, who did the Lite version of GameHub. And this is basically a way for people to post their reports on what games they've managed to get running, the settings they used. It's a very handy app to have. So I'll cover that as well at the end of the video. So we've got Game Native and we've got GameHub Lite. We'll start with GameHub Lite. The setup's relatively simple. So we'll just press A as soon as it loads up to sign into Steam. I'm recording this on my phone, so I'm just going to pause the video and sign into my Steam account using SteamGuard. Okay, there we are. So we've signed into Steam. Literally all I've done is use my QR code on my phone, signed in, and here we are. So now you can see my Steam library, don't judge me. So I haven't tried too many games, so I'll get Megabonk because it did work. For some reason, there doesn't seem to be any order to the games, and as far as I'm aware, I haven't found a way to sort them. If I try and go to the settings, or there's a search, but no sort. So I'm just going to tap on the search and do Megabonk, just because I know it's a game that runs pretty well. So we'll tap on that. we'll get the game. Sometimes it can take a second to load how much storage it's going to take up. We'll install that. So you get this little warning, keep the screen on and stay in the app for a smooth download. So I know, don't ask again. So that's downloaded quite quickly. So we can play now, and that will download some initial first-time setup files, which you'll do for every game that you install. But the first thing we want to look at is if you tap these three dots and go into PC game settings. This is the equivalent of our graphic settings that we'd look at in other emulators. Now, I found that for resolution, even though it's a 1080p device, when I set it to 1080p, it warped a lot of the image and didn't look too good. So I found that just leaving it on 720 works perfectly fine. So most of these you won't need to touch for compatibility. So the compatibility layer, I found the Proton 10.0 does work quite well. And then for our GPU driver, you want to use the most recent turnip driver which is available. So if you keep scrolling up, there's quite a few. And then we want this, the time of recording, it's version 26. And then this one that just has the underscore R8 at the end. So I'll tap that, so it can take a second just to download and install. Oh, it's not set that one for some reason. Might have had to give it another tap. There we go. So the more turnip drivers come out, the better compatibility seems to be. So this will probably run even better than it did when I was first testing this a few days ago. So auto sync cloud saves. So this will auto sync with your Steam cloud saves. I have had some minor issues. I think with Megamonk there was a conflict between an online and an offline version. I don't know if that was related to my internet. However, just be wary. It did throw up a warning and say which ones you want to keep, so that's just something to be aware of. Obviously, you can back up the local data if you need to. And then I've not looked too much into installing components. Touch controls I haven't used because we've got the controller. And then I'm not going to touch the developer options. So as the game has native controller support, it's just going to use, I think it's X input that it uses, which is your default Xbox layout. So I'll hit play now. So sometimes you might get this, which version of the game do you want to use? You'll have seen this if you've used Steam. So I'm just going to use the DirectX 11 version. And then I'm just going to select always use that option, and then we'll start the game. So the first time you want to play the game, it is going to have to download some additional firmware. It will also download some first time start files. So if you've ever, like I said, used Proton on a Steam Deck, this will be quite familiar to you. So I'll just speed this up a little bit just until it's ready to boot into the game. The first time setups can take a little bit longer than normal, but they only have to be done once. Once it's done, it normally boots into the game relatively quickly. So there we go, it's downloaded the initial setup files, so it's just doing its first time setups and then logging me in. This part doesn't normally take too long, I think it depends on the game. And there we are. So I found that for this game I have to tap first before it will let me actually use the controller. But as you can see, I'm just using the controller. I've not set the controller, although I do, because I was playing this on a Steam Deck, I do tend to make sure that the controller is set to match. So I think I've already set it. Yes. So I think by default interact is X, which is at the top, whereas I'm used to it being Y, or what would be Y. So we're going to back out and then let's give it a quick blast. We're playing Mega Chad. I'm not very good at this game, but I play for fun, not to win. So as you can see, frame rate wise down here, we're hovering around mid 50s. Obviously this is all dependent on how busy the screen is. In terms of the turnip drivers, this seems to be pretty much on par with what I was getting before, but like I said, it did run really well before. So yeah, so that works a treat. So now we're going to flip over to Game Native, and I'm going to try and install Megabonk on Game Native as well. So now we're back on the home screen. I'm going to load up Game Native. The setup process for this is pretty much identical. We're going to allow that. So I'll just use the QR code again. So I'm just going to quickly stop the recording and sign myself in. Okay, so I've signed back in, and this one does display the games alphabetically, which I always prefer because it makes it a hell of a lot easier to find things. So you'll see that on this one, there are these little labels at the top saying things are compatible. I believe this is taken from EmuReady. However, do give it a try. It's worth mentioning as well, this is the Max model, which has the 16 gigabytes of internal RAM. If you have the, I think the base or the Lite model, I don't know if it'll be powerful to run these games. I think the Pro model might, but they can be quite RAM intensive. So I'm going to also download Megabonk on this, just for some comparison. So it's a shame that I've had some more issues with this because I think I much prefer the UI. So you're going to get some permissions things, so we're going to allow, we'll install that. So the way these work, these compatibility layers, is essentially installing the app inside a container. So even if I've installed the game on Game Native, GameHub Lite won't be able to see it. They're self-contained. So this is just purely for comparison purposes. And then once I've demoed this, I'll talk a little bit about EmuReady and how to use the data that it provides. So the install time was pretty much the same. So I've got this little thing here, known config works on your GPU. So I'm going to tap these three dots up here, and then I'm going to edit the container. I'm going to edit, trying to edit the container. Oh, there we go, it's a bit slow. It's fine. So this is still quite early in development compared to GameHub, so for some reason it keeps giving me these errors even though it does work. So for the wine version, so it's only giving me Proton 9 and 10. So don't really know why that is, why it won't let me have. So I keep getting this error and I'm not too sure why. So for the graphics driver, I'm going to go away. So it doesn't seem to give me access to all the graphics. Right, I'm going to close this and then I'm going to reopen it. So as you can see, it's a bit finicky. So at the top it's put Megabonk, so it does prioritize your installed games. So we'll open that. We'll go back to that edit container. So I don't know if you could see that, but on the graphics, it only allowed me, it's not pulled through the most recent turnip drivers. So I'll just use the ones it's got. So I've not changed anything, so I'll discard it. So I'm just going to play this. So this will download those first time files, the same as it did in GameHub Light. And we'll see how this runs. Off the top of my head, I believe this ran slightly better on GameHub Light, but as it's a relatively low cost game, it doesn't quite utilize the full power of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. So there we are. So again, I have to tap for some reason. So it has pulled through my cloud save, which is good. And then if I hit play, we'll do exactly the same as what we did last time. We'll go on the desert. So is there a way to, can I get the overlay on here? Or that's the on-screen controls? I don't want them anymore, go away. Will that go away by itself? So I don't have the overlay on for some reason. Let's delete. Get rid of the... So I can't seem to get rid of the overlay. That's my fault. But I don't know if it's showing up very well on the video, but it's definitely a little bit... It's still playable, but it feels like it's hovering more around the kind of 30 to 40 FPS rather than the mid 50s we were getting on GameHub Light. But like I said, I wasn't able to get the latest turnip drivers. That could be a me issue. It could be an app issue. But like I said, it's very early in development. So one thing I should note as well, I'm just going to close out of this. So we'll shut it down as well. So if you swipe down from the top, I have the fan on smart mode. So I don't know if my microphone will pick it up, but the fan did kick up. And I also have my performance on high performance, and it was still kind of chugging along a little bit. So I personally say install both, see how things run on GameHub Lite. If they don't work, try Game Native, and vice versa. Now, the best way to see what games will and won't work is EmuReady. So you can create an account and you can add what devices you own and filter things that way. So I can see here there's some people who've been doing reports for the Retroid Pocket 5 or Eden. So as well as PC games, it's also a great way to see which emulators people have been able to get things running on. So if I... Well, it signed me out for some reason, don't know why it's done that. So you can search, you can also submit your own reports if you find that you've been able to get a game working or you haven't. You can let others know. It's very community driven, it's very supportive. If I search for Thor, that's not what I wanted. So in the reports. So I'm going to search for Thor. So as you can see here, some games have come up. We can see that some are running on the Pro, some are running on the Max. So we can see Borderlands, it says it's working great. Apparently Lego Star Wars only gets to the intro, but that's through Eden. So that's more likely, that'll be an issue with the Switch version. So it's just a case of just finding those specific games you want. So for example, one game I did manage to get running, but it was a little clunky, was Fallout New Vegas. I started watching the show, it was excellent, it made me want to play it again. It's been a while. So it says playable. So, but that's on a Galaxy S3. So on the Odin 3 Ultra, it says great. So I've got the Odin 3 Ultra, I'll be doing videos on that shortly. But if we go into there and we have a look, so we can see other devices. So if I check out the Odin 3, we can see, right, they ran it on GameHub, assuming that's the original version. So yeah, they didn't use GameHub Light, so that is a something that you can report. They ran the resolution at 720. There's some notes here as well. Medium graphic settings, near solid 16 good springs, and then the settings they've used to enable their compatibility laters, the GPU drivers. So all the necessary information there. So this is a really great resource. So I fully advise it. So yeah, that's a rough overview of how to get Steam games running on the AYN Thor. If this helped you out, I'd appreciate a like or a subscribe. If you've got any questions or you want me to check out specific games, if you're waiting for your Thor to arrive and you want me to check something out in the meantime, if I've got it, I'll do my best. So yeah, I will see you in the next one.